Welcome back to another episode of the TeleWellness podcast. I'm Marta Hamilton, your host, and today we're going to be talking about everything from vulnerability, authenticity, maybe get into a little bit of talk about sports. Because today I'm interviewing Dr. Richard Ollberger, also known as Dr. O, beyond pathology and performance and clinical psychologist. Dr. Ollberger defines what it means to be human in the modern world. He is a provider, he provides psychology as a clinical psychologist. His background, he has offered so much support to the community as the Richard Listens community. It's a tribe of everyday people, from nurses to coaches, social workers, mortgage brokers, lawyers, entertainment executives. And he really talks about what it means to seek to become heroes in our own lives. His background has worked from everything from Los Angeles Police Department, helping to save hundreds of lives, and is here to look and break the stigma of within psychology, and is really drawing on the tradition of depth and empathy. He's originally from New York, and he's now an authority on human behavior. Hi, Dr. Ollberger. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you so much. What a gift to have your name and your accolades touted. Thank you. Good self-esteem.
Yeah, I know. I am sure sometimes it's different, right? Hearing all the things. And I didn't, for all of the listeners, I didn't even go into like all of it. There's a lot to talk about, which before we hit record, we were just in conversation because Dr. Ollberger has written a book also. So I wanted to talk about the book. He's got a community, there's podcasts, there's, we're going to talk maybe about the Zero Method. That's the name of the book. It's on Kindle, paperback. So there's just so much that Dr. Ollberger is doing. So I'm very grateful that you're willing to spend some time with us to help impart some of your experience, expertise, and wisdom. And I'll start with the first question of, why do you do the wellness work you do? You're doing all kinds of wellness work. Why do you do it?
It's a great question, and I think, Marta, the answer changes over time as we go along. But I think the most simplest answer is I've learned that my gifts and the way I've been oriented to this world since a young child is around connection. And no matter what I'm feeling or going through or what's been going on externally in my family and the world, connecting with others, hearing their story has always drawn me in and sometimes drawn me away from whatever dialogue or narrative I was playing or mood I was in. And in some ways has completely altered friendships, relationships, and created purpose. So I think giving this to others and also just seeing this as part of my higher purpose. This is part of a way in which I feel better in the world, that I feel like my sense of self is expanding through understanding, through curiosity, getting to hear others' stories, or even look at ways in which my initial judgments are incorrect or so off base is kind of a curious adventure for me. So there is that portion. I think I was born with the listening bug. My mother was a guidance counselor. I think every family friend we had was a teacher or guidance counselor. Yeah, so without being redundant, I think it's been a personal journey towards understanding myself and growth, and understand that connecting with other human beings has always drawn me in and excited me. The ability to provide support or witness someone else, even when I wasn't well trained, has always been this way of being able to fit in or navigate the world and find identity, and a way to alleviate suffering, that it mattered in the lives of others. So I've always been curious and drawn to the many different ways to be creative in listening and connecting, and that power and that gift to alleviate pain just by being there for someone else.
When you spoke, it was so beautifully said, because honestly, I think that's one of the wonderful things about our profession. I'm a master's level clinician. You're a clinical psychologist. There are differences, but I think that ability to connect with people, that human connection, that own sense of it being more than a job, a paycheck. It's this incredible opportunity for growth through human connection, and the ability to be inspired through what we witness in our work is just honestly such an amazing, humble opportunity for just an honor. I mean, really, it's just really an honor to be in our profession. So you said that so beautifully, truly.
Yes, and at the same time, the Achilles heel of every strength gets shown to us about how this work has limitless opportunities. You mentioned LAPD and Skid Row and getting to go
Mm-hmm.
into all the inner reaches of where people need you the most or where crises are. And yet we learned the hard way from personal experience, part of the zero method, which is if we don't have these practices ourselves, you and I talked before we got on, how
Yeah.
many times per day I tell a client to do something and I'm like, did you do that this week? Right? Like, where are you walking the walk? And not even just in terms of being authentic, but to ourselves. Like, are we caring? Are we giving the love that we are providing outwards? Because the clients may not know it, the world may not, but well, we know it. And I think it's this, maybe that's when we start to talk about like the new day of therapists or maybe the awareness. If we can break from that stigma of just being here to treat something outside of ourselves or fix external problems, it's a very Western method, where now it's much more about I'm part of this process. By healing me, I heal whatever situation I'm in.
Yes, I want to know more about the zero method. For those listening, yes, give us a little bite, a snack size. I mean, it's a book. It's available out there. So just share with us.
So zero method, very, very simple, but I realized, right, awaken the hero within very that obviously the personal opportunity to in the grief of my father to recognize his gifts that like we started to talk about that sometimes he didn't have a college degree and yet I would watch him listening to people and sitting with them, anyone who visited our home. And so I talk about a little bit about what I learned from him from just observing and from what that kind of environment creates, but also this kind of steps for men. How do we kind of take inventory of our life, the very short chapters, exercise at the end of each chapter to look at where am I out of balance? How, if I was the key to my own hero's journey, how would I begin to unlock it? Maybe you're pretty balanced. Maybe you're excelling at work and relationships, but it helps look at who are the mentors, who's your, board of advisors in life, who's at your mentorship, like you mentioned, coming from some mentor meetings on the way here. How's your higher purpose? How's your sense of connection? So it helps take a self inventory and begins to walk you through this place of looking at your own life and moving through the steps, zero being the highest level, that you're moving through this place of being kind of in connection, in flow with your life, where you understand by sitting here doing this podcast or listen to it, this is part of my purpose. This is part of my growth. We can remove these barriers of feeling fragmented or doing things that don't serve us anymore.
What do you think, in today's modern world, we talk about what it looks like to be a human in today's modern world, that fragmentation happens so much, right? Especially when there's perception or what we want others to how we want others to perceive us. Depending on what we show in social media, there's a lot of image projection. So how does that play a role? What recommendations do you have for those who are trying to take inventory, take away the fragments, be authentic, do that work? How do you do that in today's modern? I don't want to blame it on social media. I'm focusing on social media, but there's a lot of research on that. So, what recommendations do you have to do that work?
Well, the first step is beginning, right? And asking for support and getting in connection to those who are holding you accountable because social media could be great. It's gotten me a podcast, it's
Hmm.
connected us, and it's
Yeah.
your whole platform, right? So any black and white thinking could be dangerous. On the other hand, if my goals to grow as a human being is to stop wasting time, if I don't think there's ever time for myself or time for creativity or fun, We have a lot of stories and ideas, and if I'm not open to feedback and looking at how much time I be giving to YouTube or all the apps, even if my goal was dating and I'm spending tons of time on dating apps, but I'm not moving it forward, then I'm not really conscious of how I'm using my time, and therefore I'm not really in connection to what I'm doing behaviorally to move myself forward or why I'm doing it. So I think the goal is to make the unconscious conscious, and to open up this discussion. Like I don't think the goal would be to say all men should be more, vulnerable and emotional, because there are some men where they do have a strength and a leadership quality, and maybe that's their gift. They are the ones who can run into burning buildings and save lives. If we didn't have physicians that are willing to perform multiple life-saving surgeries, or serve during COVID. So it's not that we want to turn off these amazing qualities, but there's a degree where even the greatest strengths and the most accomplished of ourselves need to look at the flip side. Where do I need to step back? Where do I need to learn how to let wisdom in? Where do I need to let go of control? Where would it serve me to create more balance for my long term health? So I think it's learning a perspective that's a little bit more macro, no matter how focused you are, and being open to that even the smallest of changes, the smallest increments, right from the book Atomic Habits, learning how to change how you think, how you approach, how you give to yourself, or what time you create for the most important things is essential, or things will not change. So I think the modern world is much. There are incredible tools. I'm able to do a Shaolin monk training exercise from my home, right? It's potentially amazing, right? So if used appropriately, look, AI is coming. We could have a whole show on that. There are tools, there are gifts, there are abilities. I think there's an AI service for suicidal calls. So, even the fact that the perception that someone would not be alone in the darkest moment, the darkest time, there are amazing gifts from technology and innovation. But the opportunity to learn, I don't have to rest on, being masculine in the way that was fear based. I don't have to rest on these roles that were prescribed for me. And if there's discomfort there in learning how to get vulnerable or get beneath feelings, I want to take that path as a way to get more connected. So it's about seeing these anything that I cling to too strongly in my beliefs, or where I'm judging others, or where I'm, having to shoot somebody else's belief, way of living down, is probably an area where I need to allow in care and support. So we just want to remove and identify blockages. So if you're not doing that work, whether it be through a coach, really, we talked about that. What's the new way? I don't care what road leads you to Rome. You don't necessarily need a clinical psychologist or a psychiatrist or a lifelong, subscription to therapy these days. But whatever way you get to this kind of self awareness journey, we only grow as much as we invest in it and are willing to look
Yeah.
into it.
Yeah, so I like what you said there. The first step is to start and to evaluate. When I was doing research about your book and learning more about your work, I saw that a lot of it was around the idea of like what is success. So I loved everything you just shared, talked about evaluating how am I spending my time? Is it serving, is technology serving through innovation towards something that I view as success? And I don't think I mentioned in the beginning, a large component of your work, your expertise is around men's work. So specifically men's work with vulnerability and authenticity. And I know you mentioned in when we first were talking, sports psychology, martial arts. So I'm really curious when it comes to some of those ways to break down, right? I think it's awesome that you share as a clinical psychologist, just get in there, start doing the work, start peeling back, start breaking down the barriers. What are some ways that you see that it's really effective to break down barriers, or maybe look at those roles that were prescribed to us? What are some approaches or methods that you recommend typically? like avenues for that?
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, I've gotten to sit in on conferences that are for the art of masculine presence, and I also sat in the one that's art of feminine presence. So I think some of it is like just having dialogue or being open in our partnerships and our relationships. What's working, what's not, what's needed. Um, you took it athletes, right? How much is this performance based? How much of my identity is tied to achievement results? So, if you can get an accountability partner, it's not just technology. It's like you said, my PhD. I have clients who are trying to get into an MBA program. Why? Why do you want this? Like getting really clear about your choices. If you're not clear, being willing to hit the pause button and slow down. Do not put that addition on your house. Do not pass go. Because if you're not clear why, or if you're sensing your partner doesn't have the same value of money or the same understanding, you can buy them a car, a Rolex, an addition on the house. The same issues, the same struggle is going to be there. So the willingness to trust intuition, to trust that feeling of what you need. So if you're a man who needs alignment from his family, who wants to lead his family, that wants connection, that wants agreement on finances, agreement on the way we practice spiritually in the house, agreement in how we have fun, agreement on when we shut off devices, right? This level of team building, of communication, it's the priority. Like you matter. That's the first thing, right? So whether it be the masculine role, or whether it be encouraging women to allow this in partnerships, there has to be opportunities for each person to lead. And if one person's taking on too much, like we say as clinicians, we're taking on, we're taking on, we're taking on. If we're doing that in our partnerships too, we're not either trusting the other person or giving them a chance to grow. And sometimes that is an uncomfortable area. So some of it is learning to practice acceptance. The baseball player, you're going to strike out. Best of them get hits 3 out of 10 times, right? Over the course of a career, right? Same thing. If your partner doesn't do the dishes, doesn't walk the dog like you do, doesn't take care of the kids like you do, there has to be some acceptance in it's not going to look perfect because we're trying to get to this place of connection and deeper appreciation. So it's reorganizing. We're not in competition here. We're here to figure out how to connect and how to be more effective and more fulfilled. So I think you need to be asking yourself, right, what are you living for? If you're not happy, what's missing? And how do we help create that? We are agents of change. And no matter what situation or environment you may be in, there are things you can do to improve your life and to take care of your emotional health, even if others around you and the environment is not ready, right? We know plenty of stories of lives changed in prison. Sometimes, in fact, people who are mandated for counseling have greater efficacy than those in Beverly Hills who could pay whatever they want because they are committed to showing up. So that's what we want to create is that level of if you don't have someone in your life that's willing to care for you so much that they're willing to, you know, sit on you and hold you accountable and be disagreeable about it. If everyone around you is a people pleaser or afraid to tell you things, it's time for a level up. So we need to be looking for communities or groups or any process that is going to keep us growing. And if you're stagnating, reach out, right? Reach out. If you don't know where to find it, ask someone else who did. So, staying in our own bubble, I think if there's one toxic thing or pattern or traumatic thing that's happened through all the changes the last year is this kind of isolation to protect. So I want to say thank you to myself for self accepting and keeping myself alive and masking or doing whatever I did to survive COVID and move to telehealth. And then I want to also validate where is it that I want to go now? How can I move my life towards where I need to become more fulfilled? And only you know. That's the thing. I can't, nobody else outside to you. The therapist could tell you for years. A coach could tell you for years. A trainer could tell you for years. It has to come from within you.
Yeah, you're so right. The wheels were turning on so many levels, right? It was like,
I'm not sure I
I
answered
don't
your
know which
question,
question to
but
ask. You did, because I'm like, oh man, I think before before we hit record, I was thinking, man, we talked about this. We can go in so many directions. And now I'm seeing, I want to talk to you about relationships, partnerships, parenting, workplace. I mean, and it's interesting, you're mentioning men's work and masculine and feminine, and I'm picturing what I've seen in my own clinical work as a therapist, and I'm a wife too. So what you're talking about, like, there is a lot to be said about.
Yeah, the workplace is changing, right? We're getting, I work in the Office of Diversity and Equity and inclusivity, right? It's like we have to learn how to change our perspectives on, pronouns and be really. There's more sensitivity than ever, and it's requiring change. It's requiring increased awareness and discussions, and it's confusing and it's inspiring at the same time. So this is where the vulnerability comes in. It's like to acknowledge I have no idea what I'm feeling because you don't. Who knows how to do something when it's new? It's going against automatic patterns. So yeah, we're all PhDs and adults and accomplished in our fields, and we're all children learning how to figure it out and fumbling
Yeah,
around.
yeah, no, absolutely. And that vulnerability piece, what do you typically see as the biggest barrier to look or to be vulnerable, or like, let me back up too. How can others, because we're trying to break down the bubble of isolation, how can others, loved ones, facilitate vulnerability in others?
I think that you mentioned like I mean I could just think of personal examples. I think that we got to look at ourselves and look at our blind spots. And you know if I come home as a therapist and start talking to my children in therapy language,
Yeah.
it's automatic, and I may think I'm caring, but it's probably the last thing that's needed. So I think vulnerability means really asking yourself, if you're committed to this relationship, what does this person want? How do they like to connect? Being willing to go to wherever they go. If my daughter likes
Yeah.
Taylor Swift, that
Yeah.
might be that
Did
may
you go to
be
the tour? Yeah.
thankfully someone else took her. But it's like, hey, that's what do you want this week? Oh, I want a skirt and a crop top. I guess that's my opportunity to give, right?
Yeah.
So we're moving. We all have this. Our partners may like to receive in different ways than we're comfortable giving, and our friends as well, like willing to meet them where they're at, not getting into ego battles or
Yeah. The
willing to
power
see
struggles.
the
Yes.
power struggles, the ego, and get deeper. What might be going on with my friend? What are they needing right now? What's some way I can give to them without needing anything right now? So I think it's acknowledging our power. I think in families it is about, sometimes it's just about being a friend, removing our needs and our list and our judgments and our unfulfilled wants, because they may be coming from an early wound. We may not even know where some of these lists come from. So there's value in writing down the lists of judgment. There's value in bringing them to a couple session and clearing them out. We do a process called clearing, even in our men's groups. Men come in and they say, "Hey, you didn't text me back last week, and I don't trust you." Or, when I was talking, you were looking off to the left. It can be so subtle in families and in relationships. The body language, you're looking at your phone too much. I don't feel you're present. So having these discussions regularly, if you can,
Yeah.
create the time when connection is happening or fun, or where each person knows for a certain time per week they get to be special or seen. So whether it be in a circle that you create of your friends, these are all metaphors. Your circle is your family, your coworkers in your office. If you can have that a level of awareness with one person, it's amazing. If you can get that in a group that you can meet with regularly, that gives you the love and is strong, at least knowing that somebody else is attempting to meet your needs, sometimes is all it takes. When we talk about organizations and teams, right? That everyone's trying to work together. We may get it wrong all the time. We're going to fail consistently. We're going to miss more than 7 out of 10, right? Especially major league pitching, right? It's going to get harder and harder.
Yeah, but you're right. I picture so much freedom in being able to share, to connect, and to focus on the inner circle, to be able to look and share and reflect openly. There's a lot of freedom in that.
Yes, in creating micro, right, you then can bring that into the macro. Even if there's things about the world that we can't change, it gives us more agency, it gives us power. It's kind of a tribal or community feeling, and which is one area I can put my focus. I may not be able, some people are out of work right now, they're struggling. Well, I could put my focus here on community. I can add over here. My worth is not my work. My worth is not my bank account, but we tell ourselves maybe that it is, not to minimize anyone having to pay a bill, but it is about finding your value. In fact, most people I know found jobs because they were volunteering, or quit smoking because they were volunteering, because they weren't thinking about the problem alone. They were building something even stronger within themselves and in the world. So your question about vulnerability, authenticity, I think it's also the opposite side. I'm a man and I hurt. I'm a man and I cry. I'm a man and I am wounded when someone speaks meanly to me, harshly to me, rejects me. I think it's about owning to yourself that we're carrying around wounds, we're carrying around pain, and expressing it more regularly, expressing it and letting it go. We have to get in that practice, because the practice of holding it in and soldiering on and surviving, it may have made you successful. It may get you to being a doctor. It may get you to being a CEO. That's not the finish line, though. If we're hiding behind pain and we don't let anyone in, I'm sorry to say it. And I understand why you had to be that way. I want to validate and self love for why you had to survive. But I also want you to know that we want you to be loved and cared for. And that's the ultimate goal, to be in healthy, the people who live the longest and the happiest, most healthy, close relationships. That's the
Yes,
study.
social support, even healing from illnesses and diseases. I mean, the research shows again and again, social support, your support system, your group, your close circle, that is a huge predictor of overall health and longevity, like you mentioned. So
Exactly.
yes, I'm so
Thank
glad
you
that
for mentioning.
brought that up. No, I'm so glad you brought that up, because it's interesting, because I thought when we were going to start this interview that a lot would be focused on yourself and how interesting, like things that you can do for yourself, things to ask yourself, which it is a big part, but it's because it's for a macro outward lens as well, specifically about how you connect with others. So,
Right. Our relationships are one area. Right. It's
yeah.
both. It's like if we're too focused on the relationships, we may have to pull back and look at, how am I thinking? How am I speaking to myself? Am I saying loving things? I have successful people laughing to me weekly. I can't believe I'm doing this silly exercise in the mirror of saying, I love you, you're worthy. But it changes their energy. They're laughing when they show up to work.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
They're laughing
important.
when their partner sees them when they walk in the door. What's the energy? So, that others are getting off us. So
Yes. That
it's this
exchange.
flow,
Yes.
right? The flow between
How
inner and
can
outer world.
people connect with you? Because I know you have you have social media and you have a following there, and you're providing valuable content for people, right, to engage with. And how can people connect with you? What's the best way?
Yes, thank you so much, Marta. Richard Listens Instagram is probably the easiest. Everything's Richard Listens. Twitter, the website is Richard Listens, which has old podcasts, also Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So a few different incarnations and amazing guests in many realms on the Richard Listens podcast. And my website has my contact info. You can DM me on Instagram. And the book is available, like you said, on Amazon or Kindle, The Zero Method. And if you need help or direction or just link to resources, I'm happy to be a part of your community.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for being a part of our wellness journey. I really appreciate it. And I hope this is one of many conversations, because I'm here with my pen and my paper with like more questions I want to follow up with. So thank you so much for being a part of our wellness journey.
Anytime. Thank you so much, Martha. Thank you to Wellness Hub.